Thank you, Sandrine. Let me pick up immediately on what she was saying about reducing consumption patterns, because that's going to be at the heart of the next 20 minutes, talking about the future of land use for fuel, food, and forests. And that's what we want to get to the heart of. A lot of it's been discussed already, but we want to keep pushing that. Very much in the line of what we've just heard from the Club of Rome about a just transition and reducing consumption patterns. I'm going to ask each of our three guests to introduce themselves. William from Benin.
My name is William Kwende. I'm the founder and chairman of AgriTech Group Holdings, and we are present in Dubai as Global Organic. We are working value chains to reduce the food waste from farm, post-harvest in Africa, and bringing to different markets, the Middle East, Asia, and Europe, a certain number of products which we are processing using zero carbon and zero deforestation methodologies.
And you come from a nation where 80% of food is wasted.
Absolutely. The lack of energy and the lack of infrastructure result in such high losses, despite the fact that there's a lot of production, in contrary to what people believe. The real problem is how to process the food, mainly at the farms, which mean in the rural areas, and prepare the food for export. So have the roads and the other logistical infrastructures required to export the food to the consumer market.
Srdjan Susic from the WWF.
Yes. We at Emirates Nature-WWF here in this country, United Arab Emirates, in a nutshell, we're saving the planet, country by country, and that's what we do here.
You are saving the planet?
We are.
Good.
We are trying.
All right. So it's moving, forgive me, no one has yet said it quite that boldly, that they are saving the planet.
That's what we are. We are trying to conserve nature, we are trying to preserve resources, we are trying to straighten out problems and issues with consumption patterns. We are trying to, here, particularly work on land use planning. We're working on food security, energy, climate change, species conservation, hence, saving the planet in a nutshell.
All right, Kyle Wagner from the Madar Farms.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Kyle Wagner. I'm the head of operations for Madar Farms. We're a Dubai-based ag-tech company focused on solving and helping to solve the food security challenges we face in this region. We're doing that through using the latest technology in indoor agriculture, using controlled environments and hydroponics technology to grow food here using the least amount of water and electricity possible. We're also doing this through an educational outreach because we do believe a key part of the equation for change is changing mindsets.
How do you change a mindset? We're doing a lot of work in Thinking the Unthinkable on the mindset, behavior, and culture. How are you doing it? This is about leadership and also about every level of an operation. Changing a mindset, that's very ambitious.
That's right. I think we're starting on that road today. Simply by being here today, engaging in these kind of dialogues, we're helping to further that conversation. Beyond that as well, we're also involved in an educational outreach because, let's face it, the population of tomorrow is the youth of today. So we have an education program, for example, where we're trying to look at today's primary and secondary school children right here in the UAE and introduce them to something which is a bit of a foreign concept, which is agriculture. If we look around us today, we are not surrounded by farms and blowing green fields, but instead we have a few small greenhouses here and there. So by getting these children today, understanding where is their food coming from, are they sourcing it locally, what is the nutrition content of this food, getting them to understand these questions will allow them to be more empowered adults when they grow older.
Okay, at the heart of this, in this 20 minutes, is the efficient consumption of food, reducing wastage significantly. Srdjan, the kind of numbers you've got of the horrific level of waste.
It is specific, yes. Horrific, it is different in many other parts of the world. Here in GCC and in this country, the facts are that only 5% of the land here is arable, and it's quite obvious when you fly a plane, when you drive a car around this country, this beautiful country I should say, you see a lot of desert, and only 5% of it can be used for growing crops. What's important also, because of this fact, almost 82 to 85% of food is imported in this country. But the controversy around the whole thing is that if you look, for example, at Dubai, only the Emirate of Dubai, 55% of municipal household waste is food waste. And it's an anomaly that can be addressed. We're thinking about two main possibilities. One is addressing diets and making diets of local people more sustainable. And we are also thinking about reducing food waste by generating policies and implementation plans how this can be done.
Let's make a contrast, William, with what happens in Benin with waste of food.
Yeah, I mean, given the global issues with climate change, what's going to happen very soon is that we won't have enough food, especially in markets that are heavily depending on importing food. This is the reason why all the losses that we are having post-harvest must be brought back into the value chain. And this is critical. This is critical for global food security. The way we are doing that, the way we are addressing that, is to bring in renewable energy. Because the main factor for this wastage during production or after production is storage.
Can I just go to one point, though, respect for food? I'd just like to get that from all three of you. Here we've got 55% wasted in Dubai, and there are figures elsewhere, but we don't have to list them here. But the contrast with the way food has to be respected in your country.
Yes, I think it starts with the land. Okay? We must, first of all, respect the land where we're producing this food, which means that the land must be protected, and degradation of land, which has been a very big problem recently, has to be stopped.
But people don't throw away food in your country.
People don't throw away food. People don't throw away food. When we're talking about consumption habits, people have the habits of eating whatever is left over, for example. Right? So they can cook once a day and eat that food for the entire day. So you don't have wastage. And when you have remaining food, it can be used for family animals or compost.
Kyle, because I need to come back to you, because on this platform yesterday, we had the Minister for Food Security in a very vivid kind of presentation saying, essentially, we've got to change the habit here in the UAE because there's too much thinking that it's a disrespect to not leave food on the plate at the end of a meal. Is that change of mindset happening?
I think it is, slowly but surely. You're right. I mean, the message we're hearing recently is we shouldn't be focusing on quantity when we're trying to display hospitality, but rather quality. I think that's a key, again, mindset.
But is the mindset
shift.
changing?
Yes, it is. It is slowly. And I can say that because if you look at, for example, some of the market surveys were done, people are starting to ask these questions more and more. Where does the food come from? And by simply asking that question, where does the food come from, it shows that they're respecting their food. It shows that they're asking, where does this come from? What is the value of this food? They understand that somebody put the effort into growing that food, into producing it. When you understand how much value and energy goes into producing food, you respect it more, and I think you're less likely to waste it then.
The reason I ask that, because you put an emphasis on the next generation and the education of them. Are they appreciating the enormity of and the value and the high cost of much of what they take for granted? They presumably assume they can just, with their parents, or their parents will provide stuff which comes from a supermarket.
You know, it's a real challenge here. I'm raising 2 kids myself in this region, and we are blessed here with an amount of abundance that probably exceeds most of the world population. So I think raising any young children in this region, we have to really ask ourselves, how do we emphasize this gratitude and this appreciation for what we actually have here? So yeah, that message is coming through. We're hearing that in the curriculums as well, when we're engaging with teachers and with the Ministry of Education, for example, in terms of policy. These things are being ingrained in today's school children's. Yes,
Srdjan, I mean, that horrific figure of 55% from Dubai, do you believe that in a year or two that could be reduced quite significantly? Do you believe mindsets are changing as you're saving the planet?
Yes, we are saving the planet by helping changing mindsets.
How do you get them to change their mindset?
If you look at the figures from World Health Organization, unfortunately, but this will hopefully change, the UAE is the leading nation with obesity occurrence among the children of age between 15 and 20. There's a lot of people who are obese here, unfortunately. There's a lot of sugar consumption. UAE is one of the leading countries, if not the leading country in the world for sugar consumption. Around 45 teaspoons of sugar are consumed on average by an average person, every person in this country, on a daily basis through soft drinks, food, fast food, and other sources. So we are trying to rectify that. Saving the planet takes time. The question is that, do we have that time or not?
But I'm just picking up on Kyle's very important point on mindset. Are mindsets changing among parents, mindsets changing among consumers, mindsets being changed for the next generation?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Hopefully, yes. What I believe strongly, personally and organizationally, is that this has to come faster. This has to be faster because we are just running out of time. We only have 10 to 11 years until the irreversible changes in our atmosphere happen, where the changes related to climate change we will not be able to fix anymore. This area of food security and food production and food-related value chains is tremendously important, and it by no means is something that to be looked at in terms of we have to wait for 5 or 10 or 15 years to see what happens. We just don't have time in this area like in any other area.
Crudely, does it require governments to take action, or can it be done voluntarily in the way that Kyle is trying to do it?
The government here does a lot in this regard, but like in any other society, you cannot say only one actor is responsible. It's always a two-way or a multiple-way street. You have to have the corporate world, you have to have the big FMCG companies, the big brand owners understand that it is not enough to just greenwash. It is not enough just to say we are doing something for the sake of it, for the sake of saying it, but actually to partner up with the government and the society and the citizens to work on these issues. Now, somebody could say, you know, everybody says it's three pillars, it's the government, the corporates, and the society, but that's what we have. We don't have any other stakeholders.
William, you must be sitting here saying, I come from a different kind of world where there's real food stress. At all, you take it for granted. That's the way life has been largely in Benin for centuries, and as long as one can remember. Make that contrast between when you hear that 55% wastage and you hear what Kyle is talking about changing a mindset. Flip that and work out and help us understand how that can be applied in Benin.
Well, Nick, if you remember, we were on a panel in 2015 in Gabon.
Indeed.
Yes, and I had just moved at the moment to the UAE, and I'm managing today the farms from here. We have a challenge coming ahead of us. While Mike is thinking that we might have 15, 14 years regarding climate stability, we don't have that much time for food. If you look at what's happening in Australia, you look at all the damage that's being done by climate change, a lot of the arable area in the world is being damaged. So we're going to have, within the next 5 years, a big crisis. What we can do at our end is to start having more efficient production systems. Because with 60% of arable land in sub-Saharan Africa, if we are not careful on how we use that land and how we start cutting the losses that we have post-harvest to bring more food toward the world markets, we're going to have that crisis very soon. So at our end, we are working hard to find systems, and we're doing that now gracefully with the World Bank and the African Development Bank, of putting infrastructure that runs on renewable energy, which are going to, hopefully within a very short period of time, so probably 5 years, cut these losses from 80% down to under 50%. And we're doing that by bringing also product to the market, sustainable product.
Just put it up in front of you. Maybe the cameraman can go a bit closer, particularly the top label, the top label, I think. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know if anyone can get a bit closer on that. But what it says, it's what's under here, I think, William, which I'm trying to, that. Yeah.
Right, so
what does that say?
That is saying that this product was made with zero carbon and zero deforestation.
And what product is it?
This is shea butter. It's one of the most known ingredients that is used for chocolate. 90% of the 1 million ton produced per year goes into the chocolate industry, a substitute for cocoa butter, and the rest of it goes into the cosmetic industry. So this is a product, for example, that we're making.
Like that, yeah.
This is a product that we're making in Dubai, for example, from ingredients that come from West Africa. And the same will go for other products such as cashew nuts and other crops that comes. So what we're doing is embedding all the information from production in a blockchain in order to ensure that we have the traceability that is going to allow the market to understand the products and the value and the work that has been put into processing and bringing that product to the market.
How do you apply the blockchain in Benin?
In the basically infrastructure that we're building, so we are calling that the clean processing centers, a certain number of data is collected automatically. And that data is sent to a server, which basically congregate that data to bring it along to our clients, which can then complete that data all the way to the distribution.
What's your reaction, Kyle and Srdjan, to this kind of thing? When you look, we are in a nation and in a region where there's largely, not everywhere, a degree of plenty. But when you look at that and you hear what is happening, using blockchain particularly, what's your reaction to that, Kyle? You're running a farm.
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate the amount of effort it takes to bring a product like this to market. And not just the ingredients inside, the packaging, the marketing, everything. It's an effort that involves a number of different factors to bring that to market successfully. I think it's all these different inputs into it and all the associated carbon footprint that goes into that, all these different inputs, that's multiplied when you're in a land of excess like we are here. I mean, just think about logistics, for example. Where we are here, again, longer distances, we have the aircon running in the cars and everything. We have to consider the whole holistic picture of bringing a product to market.
Let me try an experiment here. I haven't thought about this before, but when I listen to William talking about blockchain and the kind of stress and mindset changes you're thinking about here, both of you, how do you apply what you're talking about in Benin to the developed world as well, to stop, to make sure that food is produced efficiently, but also survives and there's far less loss? William, a quick thought. I'm throwing this at you without any notice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there is a continuity. So now we're looking at going from the farm to the consumer. And that information that is embedded in the blockchain is information that can help in the education. Yeah. People who are consuming the food can understand the value chain, the importance of respecting the land, of having a clean processing and a clean logistic infrastructure, and also understanding that impact in the short term and the long term.
Kyle, is this something you've been thinking about?
Yeah, of
or
course.
Have we opened a door for you here?
Yeah, of course, we've been thinking about all these things, definitely. And coming back to the topic of food waste that we mentioned there as well, one of the aspects of food waste that often gets mentioned is not so much on the demand side, but on the supply side. So if you think about, for example, if we're not implementing good food safety practices and food handling practices, we have a lot of upstream losses in the food chain just simply bringing that food to market in the first place. So one of the things that we're looking at is how do we make sure those plants, while they're growing, are as healthy and active as possible. And by doing so, by keeping those plants very happy and healthy, they're maintaining their immune systems better, and they're actually maintaining much longer life after harvest as well. So if I'm a consumer and I'm taking that product and it's now lasting for 10, 12, 14 days in my refrigerator, it's less likely to end up in my garbage can because it looks nice after that period of time.
Srdjan, when you listen to this, which I've thrown at them both, but the use of blockchain, can you see how blockchain could help resolve the kind of challenges and the horrific figures that you've produced?
Very concretely speaking, we have been working with a small startup in Dubai that has partnered up with a couple of large hotel chains. They have installed sensors in different bins for food waste in kitchens of these big hotels. And this is very important because all these hotels, or most of these hotels, didn't know what they were throwing out and how much of the food they were throwing.
They didn't know?
They didn't know. They had a bulk, rough idea about the tonnage of waste that was thrown out. But if you would ask them how much vegetables, how much meat, how much citrus,
and the value.
And the value, they didn't. They just didn't know.
That's extraordinary.
What they cared about is the value or the price that they had to pay to dispose of this waste in a local landfill. And this is what they cared about. Now, this startup is helping the hotels to put different bins in their kitchens to segregate the waste at source, and also using blockchain technology to compute and aggregate the information in one center, how much, for example, solids are produced, how much vegetables are produced, how much liquids are produced, and to actually feed that information back to decision makers in the kitchen, if you will, to the chefs, executive chefs and head chefs in large hotel chains to rectify their practices. The amount of savings that we have seen so far is tremendous. It is in tens of percents.
Of course, there are now apps where food which is surplus can be made available at very high speed, fresh, to people who can still buy it. It has a value. It's not a handout. People can buy it, but at a reduced cost.
Absolutely.
Were you astonished by what you discovered?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a chef at home. I like to cook. I think I'm a chef, or I like to think that I'm a chef. I should be modest here.
You cook.
But if you look at chefs in these big hotel kitchens, most of them who are not trained how to properly deal with food, or those people who prep the food for chefs to process further, it's amazing the amount of food they waste, how much they discard. And only through a series of a 3-day training, they actually achieve tens of percents of savings of food.
Just to press this very quickly, and then we'll quickly move on for the last 2 minutes. But of course, with AI and the new sensing devices in fridges, which most people in Benin don't have, but the food will automatically be reordered once you start using it. Can you see that we are going to have to change significantly our expectations of where food is, what we want, and where it'll come from?
I think that's a great question, because the school of thought in environmental science today is divided. One side says we have to change our values if we want to save the planet. The other side says, don't worry about the values, keep consuming, technology will address all these things. You know, the planet will be solved and the problems will be solved by technology. It's up to us to decide what's more important. And
Kyle, so what's your takeaway in the last minute? In other words, food to order, not food which is provided for you to have the option to buy it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think actually to look forward, let's look backward for one moment. If we think back to previous generations, subsistence farmers, they didn't have this luxury of choice. They simply grew what was available. They looked at seasonal crops, they looked at what was in their garden that particular day, what they could hunt, what they could scavenge locally. And in doing so, they actually probably lived with a far reduced environmental footprint compared to us today with the supermarket shelves overflowing with choices. So for me, I kind of prefer the simplicity model and say, let's actually use local ingredients, let's use what's available instead of bringing food from halfway across the world just because I can.
William, final thought. This must, okay, you live here, but this would seem all unreal to the people in your country, Benin. The big gulf that there is between the plenty that we're enjoying and we're trying to control, and the real challenges of shortage and scarcity and just basic demand, meeting basic demands for nutrition in your country.
Yes, I think we are fortunate in Benin to be a country where we are producing a lot of food and having a small population, but talking generally about sub-Saharan Africa, I think it's very important today that we use the technology to balance the inputs, to balance the output from the farm with the markets and the consumption. So I think it's the only way that we can achieve having enough food, not only for the people in sub-Saharan Africa and in areas where there is food scarcity, although they're starting to export today a lot of food, but also toward the countries who have very little arable land and who are relying on some of this crop to be exported.
I must just ask one final question. Do the villagers of Benin have mobile phones which allow them to go on blockchain?
Yes, we are the highest continent in terms of penetration for mobile.
Even more than Nairobi, even more than Kenya?
I'm talking about generally Africa, with 2 mobile phones per person.
And they understand blockchain?
Blockchain, they will understand if they were able to adopt the mobile phone as their bank, as their TV, as their radio. They'll certainly be able to understand the information that could be transmitted to them on blockchain.
Intriguing. Blockchain in Benin. Thank you very much indeed, all 3 of you.